it's been a weird offseason for the Milwaukee Bucks because all of the best teams out east, all of their contemporaries, have been making bigger, splashier moves. The Celtics extended Tatum and White, Knicks brought in Mikal Bridges and extended Jalen Brunson, Sixers brought in Paul George, Cavs extended Donovan Mitchell, even the Orlando Magic brought in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which I think was a very good move for them. And if you look at the Bucks, they were quiet for most of the offseason. They definitely weren't making those bigger, splashier moves. And I remember thinking at one point, like, where are the Bucks? They're falling behind. All these teams are getting better than them, and they're not really doing much. Like, how is that going to work? Are they going to fall? Like, are they even going to be a top 4 seed in the East next year? But as we've sort of exited the real, the meat of the offseason, like right as free agency started, and we look at what they've done, I kind of like the moves they've made. Definitely not on the caliber of, some of those bigger, splashier, blockbuster moves, but they bring in DeLon Wright, who's a solid backup point guard and a great on-ball defender. Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr. are both solid 3-and-D guys, both shot 39% from 3 last season. And I like those moves in a vacuum because I like all those 3 players, but where I think it's particularly impressive for the Bucks is because last year, in those same spots, they were playing Patrick Beverley, Jay Crowder, and Malik Beasley. And those 3 guys all have, what they bring to the table, but like it wasn't a good fit. Pat Bev just turned 36. Jay Crowder's 34 years old, and he's very up and down. Malik Beasley couldn't defend, so he was a very big liability on that end. So to replace those 3 guys, Beverley, Crowder, and Beasley, with Trent, Wright, and Prince, who, of course, they're not perfect players, but I think bring a lot more two-way upside, two-way stability to the Bucks rotation. To bring those guys in is a massive upgrade, in my opinion, and I think it's even more impressive when you consider that Milwaukee didn't really have so much financial flexibility to work with, so many assets to work with, to bring in new players. That was such a big problem for them. I mean, the fact that they were able to get Gary Trent Jr., a guy coming off a solid season, who's just 25 years old, the fact that they were able to get him on a 1-year deal, in large part because he wanted to reunite with Damian Lillard, who he played with in Portland, literally turned down bigger and more lucrative deals to reunite with Damian Lillard in Milwaukee. That was such a massive win for them. So for the Bucks to upgrade in those pieces, this is a Bucks team that obviously they have the main guys, they have the headliners, they have Giannis, they have Dame, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, those guys. But the big question for that team this past season was, okay, who's surrounding those guys? Who's the 5th starter? Who's coming off the bench? That was a big question, and it was a question that wasn't really answered last season. So to go from those question marks of last year to now, I think they definitely upgraded in the rotation for the other guys, I think is a massive win for the Bucks. Now, obviously, is it a win on the same level as the Sixers bringing in an all-star like Paul George or the Knicks bringing in Mikal Bridges? Of course not. I don't know where this puts the Bucks in their hierarchy of the Eastern Conference. A lot of stuff still has to go right for them, but when you look at what they had to improve this offseason, and when you look at the resources they had, the limited resources they had to improve this offseason, I think the fact that I don't think it's an argument that they unquestionably did improve in the ways they needed to, where they didn't necessarily need to rock the boat and bring in another big guy. That was last year when they acquired Damian Lillard. I think they needed to add in like those fringe rotation pieces, the other guys, the guys around the edges, and I think they upgraded those positions. And I think for them to be able to do that with the limited resources they had was very, very impressive for them. And it definitely makes me more excited, more optimistic, especially when you consider, Giannis presumably is going to be healthy next season. Obviously, he missed the playoffs, and that was a big reason they lost. Damian Lillard, I think, is going to come into this season in much better shape. He talked about how he came into last season not in the best shape. I think you have another year with those 2 guys building chemistry, a full off-season training camp to, implement Doc Rivers' his philosophies and what he wants to do at both ends. I think it's, so when you consider that, when you consider the pieces they added, Milwaukee's definitely looking better. They might not have gotten as better, reached as high as some of those other teams who brought in much more notable names, but they definitely got better. And considering how strapped they were in terms of their mobility, in terms of their flexibility, that's all you can really ask for.